University of Toronto bookstore was the setting for a reading by Canadian-Ukrainian author Myrna Kostash of Edmonton, Alberta, from her fifth and latest book entitled The Doomed Bridegroom. This nonfiction work is a collection of stories about a series of numerous and colorful men, all of whom were to become the doomed bridegroom, including the enigmatic dissident Vasil Stus. Why did she choose to include Vasil Stus in this work?
I was doing research for another book, the one that's called Bloodlines. And in the research for Bloodlines, I read all the stories of these dissidents and the Shastadesiatniki. You know, I knew their stories, and I read about them in Samizdat and so on. And Vasil Stus was one of these stories. But then I saw his picture. I saw his photograph. And there was something about his face. He was so beautiful. He was so sort of, mitzdi there. I mean, he was like a powerful personality, right? I became fascinated by him and obsessed. And then, of course, I knew his story about how it ended, that he died so tragically in the camps, right at the very end of the USSR, right? And if only he could have survived another 6 months, he'd be with us today. So I think it was a kind of romance and a tragedy of him and our history. And in the story I'm going to read to you tonight, I'm remembering in the very first place the life and death of a Ukrainian poet, Vasil Stus, who, in fact, I never knew. He died in the Gulag in 1985. And because he did not, in fact, die alone, that there were hundreds, perhaps even thousands, who joined him in that fate in the camps, I'm also then remembering a particular history and a particular kind of politics that brought Stus and his compatriots to their death. A thunder of resurrection on the mountain is being announced for me. Smash your fists against despair, be hiding within the copper mountain. Vasil Stus. Because I keep files about dissidents, especially those who were martyred in Soviet Ukraine, I cut his picture out. It was printed in a glossy English-language magazine, Ukraine, from Kyiv, mailed faithfully to me for months, though I had no subscription. It shows a close-cropped, dark-haired man of about 40, with big ears, a strong jaw, and a dark, bright, and meddlesome gaze straight into the camera. I do know he died in the zone in September 1985, somewhere inside that vast complex of penal colonies, prisons, and psychiatric hospitals, where until the late 1980s, the USSR held its political prisoners. Why couldn't you have held on for 6 more months, I cry. You would have been freed. He's big-boned, broad-shouldered, and robust, I guess years away from his death, with his fight still ahead of him. I kiss my 2 fingers and lay them on his cheek. Thousands of miles away from your grave, I will find you in my books, and I will drag you into my language, my purposes, and my memory. There in my memory is a pantheon of lost loves, men who were heroes I wooed and lost, and you are going to be there with them. In the mid-1960s, I was a student of Russian literature, reading Russian dissident poets and collecting their books. I was not then aware of dissident Ukrainian poets, who were not in any case at the center of my concern.
Critically described as lyrical and lovesick, passionate and sensual, Myrna Kostash takes us to another place and another time, as she looks for everlasting love in The Doomed Bridegroom.
There were several hundred packed into the Ukraina cinema in downtown Kyiv the day that the new Sergei Parajanov film, Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors, premiered. The word had gone around that something was going to happen. After the screening, the journalist Vyacheslav Chornovil and the critic Ivan Zyuba strode to the stage, grabbed the microphone, and denounced the recent arrests of artists and intellectuals, their colleagues and friends, who had been publicly protesting the Russification of Ukrainian culture.
We asked Myrna what she is working on now, and most important, will she continue to write about Ukraine?
I'm doing research, and I'm about to start writing a book that I'm calling The Next Canada. I have been spending a whole year interviewing young Canadians, 25 to 35-year-olds, asking them what they're doing, what they're thinking, what their values are, what their passions are. And from their stories, I hope to tell all of us what shape Canada is taking after us. Who knows what will happen in terms of Ukrainian history, the kind of contact that we will make with Ukrainian literature, Perhaps other Canadian writers will want to write about Stus, not just Ukrainian Canadian writers. I think Stus is a person important for all of literature, not just for Ukrainian Canadians. Perhaps it's somebody else's turn to write about him.
Question. Did you know Stus personally? What was he like as a person? Answer. Certain snapshots from my meetings with him are fixed in my memory. Winter, 1966. Nadia Svitlichna and the artist Alla Horska go to Vasil's wedding. In the bureaucratized conveyor belt atmosphere of the State Palace of Happiness, they have come to add a little human warmth to the proceedings of the registration of marriage. Vasil comes up to Nadia and asks forgiveness. For what, she wonders. I don't know. He was taking my brother's arrest very badly, she tells the interviewer on Radio Liberty in 1985.
The Doomed Bridegroom by Myrna Kostas is available at Chapters and other fine bookstores. I'm Mikhailo Curie, center stage for Kontakt. See you next time.